Here are the key words for Mercury's conjunctions with all 6 of the other classical planets. If you have Mercury conjoined Jupiter, you're a stage goer. If you have Mercury conjoined Venus, you're a people herder. Mercury conjoined Saturn, well, you're a lusty wizard. If you have Mercury conjoined the Sun very tightly, then you're a career genius. And if you have Mercury conjoined the Moon, you're a word dripper. Finally, Mercury conjoined Mars, you must be a cunning merchant. Well, obviously, there's a lot of deep meaning in these weird key phrases, but also equally obviously, it's pretty difficult to understand what that meaning exactly is. So, let's dive in more carefully and pick it apart bit by bit. So here's what the source text, Paladipika, chapter 18, verse 4, the first half of it, says specifically about these first 3 conjunctions. If you have Mercury conjoined Jupiter, you're Rangachara. You go on stage. You're also Gita Priya. You love to sing, you love song, you love music, you love arts. You sing well, you sing beautifully. And you're also a dance knower, nritya vrit, or a drama understander. So in other words, it seems to be saying you're highly educated and talented in the arts. Next, here's what the source text actually says about Mercury conjoined Venus. You are Vagmi, eloquent. You're also Bhupa, affluent, and Ganapa, a people leader, like a herder, people herder, a influencer of people. You influence the direction of things. And finally, what does this source text actually say about Mercury conjoined Saturn? Well, it says you're a lusty wizard. Lusty is Lampata, and wizard is Mayapatam. Now, it's really hard to even imagine a lusty wizard, and this word lusty is pretty specific in exactly what it means in this particular text. So hold on to your horses, you lusty wizards. We will explore this in a second. Let's just go in order though. Let's make sure we're really clear about Mercury's conjunction with Jupiter first, and then we'll move on to Mercury's conjunction with Venus, then with Saturn, and so on. So why is Mercury's conjunction with Jupiter described in this way? You're a stage goer. Well, first of all, it's because Mercury is the planet of talent. Jupiter is the planet of learning. Another thing to bear in mind is that Mercury is the planet of intellect. So if you conjoin the planet of talent with the planet of learning, the idea is that you become learned in talents. So we're really talking about having a lot of intelligence for sophisticated or refined or artful things. Hence, we can really unpack this whole idea as indicating a very intelligent and expressive person, a person who's intelligent about expression. Couple of examples of important people who have very tight Mercury-Jupiter conjunctions. Bela Lugosi, Brigitte Bardot, Viggo Mortensen, or however you say that name. In other words, Aragorn. And Shirley Temple. And also finally, Lenny Kravitz. Moving on to try and fully understand Mercury's conjunction with Venus. Well, let's pick it apart bit by bit. First of all, part of the reason why you're a people herder is because you're Vagmi. You speak very attractively, or you speak very eloquently or well. Why is that the interpretation of Mercury conjoined Venus? Well, it's because Mercury is the planet of speech, and Venus is the planet of elegance. So if you conjoin speech and elegance, you get elegant speech. This combination of Mercury and Venus indicates a person who's poetic, artistic, and expressive. For example, Bono of U2, or Rob Zombie, or Ethan Hawke. Now, the other element of the people herding thing is that you are kind of wealthy or affluent. So what is that all about? Well, Mercury represents mercantile skills. And Venus represents desirable things and wealth. You have a combination between the planet of commerce and the planet of wealth. So the person is good at making money. So that's what we're really saying here. They have abundant resources and assets. A very famous person with a very tight Venus-Mercury conjunction is Rockefeller. Now, the third part of the Mercury-Venus people herder recipe, here's where you literally get the idea of being a Ganapa. So what's the architecture behind that concept? So Mercury represents likability and Venus represents attractiveness. So that's what the sense is behind this. Mercury-Venus conjunction is a conjunction of the planet of likability and attractiveness. So these people are very admirable, easily admirable, very charming, very kind of easily the subject of celebration or celebrity. Many examples of people that fit this profile with very tight Venus-Mercury conjunctions. Anastasia, Natalie Portman, Heidi Klum, Nicki Minaj, and Bam Morgana. So with this particular conjunction, Venus and Mercury, the concept of tight conjunction or loose conjunction is important because Venus and Mercury are often quite close to each other. So when we talk about a significant conjunction, look for conjunctions within 3 degrees. Anybody that I'm mentioning here in this video as an example of a conjunction has at most 3 degrees distance in the conjunction. Now let's take a look at this really strange and fascinating concept of Mercury conjoining Saturn being describable as the lusty wizard. The word lusty is something we really have to figure out here. It's not a wrong translation, but the cultural specifics of the concept of lusty have to be very clearly understood to be able to make sense out of this. So here's the architecture behind the idea. Mercury is the planet of refinement. Saturn is the planet of bluntness. So those are two opposites. When two opposites combine, they also make a significant result. So a Mercury-Saturn conjunction is really bringing the planet of refinement into union with the planet of bluntness. What we're really talking about here behind this concept of lampata or lusty is actually rawness. It's the blunting of refinement. Ungovernedness. So we're really talking about like a barbaric wizard. Now, why wizard? What the heck is that? Well, what's the architecture behind that idea? Well, Mercury is the planet of arcane. Why is it the planet of the arcane? Because it's the planet of intellect and therefore the planet of codes and therefore the planet of symbols and therefore the planet of arcane or things which are symbolic. So Mercury represents the arcane, but Saturn again is quite the opposite. It represents the real, the practical, not the symbolic, the actual. So what we're doing here is we're taking the planet of the arcane and uniting it with the planet of the real. So it's realization of the arcane or bringing reality to the symbol. Hence a person who can utilize the arcane. Hence a wizard. So we can call them a knower of the arcane or a master of the arcane or a master of the illusion or the elusive. Some famous people with very tight Mercury-Saturn conjunctions, well, Albert Einstein. The knower of the arcane. The man's a theoretical physicist talking about black holes and things nobody has ever seen. Also, you can see how this lusty wizard part of the thing, the barbarism, the unrefinedness, it's also quite well depicted by Albert Einstein. Another person who's a very illustrative example of this conjunction is Vincent Price. Knower of the arcane, master of the strange, master of the weird, also quite unusual and kind of barbaric or not civilized or not normal himself. A similar name is kind of the modern day Vincent Price, Clive Barker. Also Dante and Anais Nin. That covers the first 3 of the 6 classical Mercury conjunctions. The other 3 we already covered in previous videos in this series, but I will go over them again here or reproduce that content here. Let's just start with Mercury's conjunction with the Sun. So Mercury Sun is described as a career genius. And what's that all about? It's because Mercury is the planet of intellect and the Sun is the planet of career. So what we're really talking about with a tight Mercury-Sun conjunction is here's a person who has significant intellect and they apply it to their career. So the bottom line of that is they don't earn a living by working for other people. They earn a living from their own intelligence, their own ideas, their own talents. So they're usually kind of unique people that have special things about them, special qualities, special skills, special ways of thinking that you can't get anywhere else. And therefore, they don't need to work for anybody else. They just need to be themselves. So some examples are Annie Lennox, Keanu Reeves, Benito Mussolini, Paris Hilton, and Johnny Cash. Similar to Mercury's conjunction with Venus, these 2 planets are almost always fairly close to each other. So it's a good time to remind you that when we talk about conjunctions, we're really talking about tight conjunctions, where the planets are close together, at least within 6 degrees of each other, but really, to really feel an effect of it prominently, between 3 degrees of each other. With the moon's conjunction with Mercury, which is supposed to represent interactive expertise. So why did I come up with that particular phrase to summarize this conjunction? Well, Paladipika describes it, first of all, as prashchita vakyam. Vak means speech. Prashchita means dripping. So the idea is that the speech is flowing out of the person in a very refreshing way. In other words, they're an eloquent speaker. This, of course, only makes sense because Mercury symbolizes speech and the moon symbolizes beauty and liquidity as well. But also to get to the heart of what is going on with the moon-Mercury conjunction, what's really going on is that the moon, or the mind, is getting a good outlet and is able to express itself and its needs and its desires effectively. And that's why this conjunction has such positive effects. Another thing Paladipika says about the moon-Mercury conjunction is artha nipuna. Nipuna means expertise, and it's an intellectual type of expertise. And artha means economic or financial or wealth. So moon-Mercury conjunction is indicative of expertise when it comes to wealth. This also really only makes a whole lot of sense because both of these planets are the 2 Vaishyas, or the economic planets. Another meaning of the word artha, however, is meaning. Artha means meaningful or worth something, has some value, has some meaning. So artha nipunam also means that the moon-Mercury conjunction symbolizes somebody who's very intelligent. So obviously, think about the houses and the signs and so forth to decide which one of these 2 variants of artha nipuna is likely to come out in a particular chart. Finally, Paladipika describes this conjunction as saubhagya kirti anvitam. Anvitam means to be endowed with stuff. And kirti means like renown or likability or celebrity. So moon and Mercury conjunctions indicate people who easily become liked. They're very likable. This also only makes sense because the moon is emotional and Mercury is the planet of friendship. So the combination signifies extending your emotions towards friends and being likable. The word saubhagya means success and wealth. So this also means to be endowed with success and endowed with wealth. To put faces On this conjunction, Muhammad Ali and Robert Redford are examples of two individuals with a very tight Moon-Mercury conjunction. Mars conjoined Mercury. Your cunning intellect affects the roots and branches of how you do business and show affection and friendship. And that's why you wind up in many fights or many battles. What's ticking? What's the heartbeat behind this interpretation? Mercury is the planet of intellect, and Mars is the planet of motivation. If you have a combination of intellect and motivation, then you have a highly motivated intellect. Your intellect works well for figuring out how to get you what you want. That's what we mean by cunning. And that affects certain things that are related with Mercury especially. So Mercury has to do with commerce, so that cunning intellect is going to be especially good for business. So Mars Mercury is pretty good for business because it gives you that selfish edge, which is good in business. But Mercury also represents friendship and relationships in general. So the cunning intellect also affects how you show affection. You show affection with motives. I know you're not a bad person, but this might be a part of the recipe whose final taste might not taste that much like this, but this is one of the ingredients in your recipe. Who else has Mars-Mercury combos besides maybe you? Tom Selleck, Rosario Dawson, Salvador Dali, very passionate mind. Richard Nixon, wow, very crafty. Crafty is a synonym for cunning. Iggy Pop, very martial in how he's expressing himself and even physically how he looks, very mercurially Mars. And George Foreman, a lot of fighting, many battles. Let's just talk for a minute about this. These are beans. You'd probably get a stomachache unless you're a bird if you tried to eat them. But look at this. This is soup made from these beans. Would you eat this? Certainly, it's yummy. So why should we start talking about food all of a sudden? Because this is your chart, and this is something in your chart. Like, for example, your conjunction of Mercury with Jupiter or whatever it is. You don't actually taste the flavor of an individual ingredient in a recipe. You taste the combination of all the ingredients in the recipe. So a video like this will help you understand what the ingredients contribute to the recipe. But don't just take only the ingredient and try to eat it and expect it to be perfect for you. If you like all these concepts and how I'm explaining things and so forth, you'd probably love to get one of my reports on your birth chart, which you can do if you go to victicara.com and click on the readings button and check out all the different options and pick one or two that you like.